You're watching The New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more conversations and articles, please visit thenewstack.io. Now on with the show.
Unleash developer productivity for the software-powered world by fundamentally changing how you deliver software to your customers. With LaunchDarkly's feature management platform, empowered developers can empower the business to release new features faster and more efficiently than ever.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the New Stack Makers podcast. I'm your host, Heather Joslin, features editor of the New Stack. And our topic today is what's new in feature management. We're joined today by Karishma Irani, head of product at LaunchDarkly, the feature management platform. And thanks for joining us, Karishma.
Thanks for having me.
Terrific. We'd like to thank our sponsor for today's conversation, which is LaunchDarkly. And we've got a lot ahead of us, so let's just jump right in.
Sure.
Before we go any further, just to make sure our listeners are on the same page as us as we start this conversation, what is feature management? How do you define it?
Sure. It's a question I find myself answering at least once a week. So feature management is a relatively new concept. So if you're not familiar with it, you're not alone. Feature management is powered by feature flags. So I'm going to start with the definition of feature flags first. For anyone who's not familiar with feature flags, it's a relatively common concept, and feature flags are essentially conditional statements in your code that control your code in production, and essentially also allow you to manage the user experience after your code's been deployed. So essentially, you're building a piece of software, you wrap it in a feature flag, you deploy it, release it to your users, and that piece of code, the conditional statement, the flag, helps you control what your end user sees. The most simple version of it is an on-off switch. You can use feature flags, and a lot of our customers do, and a lot of our prospects do, use feature flags for a simple on-off switch, a toggle, essentially. But over the years, feature flags have become more and more advanced and unlocked more advanced use cases for our customers, where we find them using them as a lever in their code to separate deploys from releases. And what this allows our customers to do is essentially test their code after it's been deployed in production to make sure that it's bug-free, to make sure that it works as expected, it's performant, it's not interfering with any other releases from other teams going out at the same time, and even do things like create multivariate flags. So you can have 6 different versions of the same feature, and using advanced targeting, control who sees what, or based on a certain set of rules, release version A to a set of customers, version B to a different set of customers. And the rules that define these customers can be literally anything. It can be location-based, it can be plan-based, it can be the version of the software, it could be any attribute that you pass. And so feature flags are essentially these very advanced toggles within your code that allow you to control your end user experience. Feature management, however, is the framework, the process of practicing and using feature flags at scale. And it includes the process of not just using flags to launch features, but also to control those end user experiences in real time. And finally, also measure the impact of those experiences on your users. So feature management, we believe, is foundational to modern software development, and it unlocks practices like trunk-based deployment, DevOps, CI/CD, as well as progressive delivery. And furthermore, teams that practice feature management at scale are known to increase their developer productivity, ship more bug-free code, do fewer rollbacks of their software, maintain higher system performance, etc. And so feature management, we believe, is a modern practice that's becoming more and more common with companies that want to deploy more frequently, innovate faster, and just keep a healthy engineering team.
And it's less risky, too.
Absolutely. Internally, our vision for feature management is to help our customers maximize value while minimizing risk, which a lot of companies think are contradictory.
Mhm. Because we definitely ask more of developers faster and innovate faster and
Right,
so on. And it's sort
right.
of I've heard it described as sort of it's a guardrail of sorts, to keep
Exactly.
to ensure code quality as you are asking people to go faster.
That's a really good. You hit the nail on the head with the term guardrail. When I speak to our customers and I'm like, so tell me, why do you think you need feature management? They describe it as almost needing a guardrail, which could be a metric. It could be an observability metric. It could be a
Mhm,
business metric, or it could be a performance-based operational metric, but having
mhm.
some sort of metric that determines whether they should proceed with the feature release or not. And feature flags essentially allow you to have that.
What are some of the key pain points that developers and engineers might encounter with feature management?
Right. By adopting feature management.
Mhm,
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting. We recently released our State of Feature Management report, which is an independent and objective report with learnings and insights that we put out there every year. And one of the insights that we learned from this year's survey of over 1,000 DevOps practitioners was that adopting feature management can initially seem a little tedious and slow the team down, but
mhm,
over time, it actually speeds your team up and accelerates the rate of your innovation. And that can seem counterintuitive at first. So, take, for example, a team that today is not using feature flags or not using a feature management platform like LaunchDarkly. In order to release their software, they simply deploy it to production and it's been released to all of their customers. It's relatively straightforward.
mhm,
When using or when considering adopting a feature management platform, you have to put certain an additional tool. It's an extra step in the process, right? Or can seem at first, where you have to define custom roles and permissions for who you want to have access to releasing to certain environments, critical environments like production.
mhm,
You have to start flagging your code or pieces of your code in these conditional statements that I described as feature flags. You now need to work with your product manager or your release managers to let them know which flag controls what piece of software. And essentially separating out or decoupling deploys from releases can seem like an unnecessary step at first. But once you start, and so those are some challenges that our engineers run into when our users run into when first adopting or considering adopting feature management. However, unanimously, the sentiment that we hear from our customers once they've started using it and have been using it for a month or so is, I can't believe or I can't remember how I used to ship software in a pre-launch Darkly world.
oh,
And it's kind of that sentiment where when you're introduced to a new modern practice of software delivery, when you're introduced to CI/CD, you can't go
mhm,
back to a pre-CI/CD world. And Launch Shortly is that component, or feature management is that component
mhm,
that kind of feels the same way, where initially it might seem like breaking one step, which is deploying or releasing from a single stage into two stages. But by decoupling deploys from releases, you can gain so many benefits, like testing in production, like kill switches,
mhm.
like running experiments, like delivering different experiences, etc.
It's a new process. It's a new set of skills to learn, but
Right,
that's kind of true about every new new way of working.
right.
Let's talk about some of the new things that LaunchDarkly is rolling out this fall. Let's start with feature workflows. What are the key updates for that, and how do they solve problems for the user?
Sure. So a really fun statement that I find myself saying pretty often is LaunchDarkly uses LaunchDarkly to build and ship LaunchDarkly. And that's a mouthful.
Uh-huh.
But it essentially means that we use, we eat our dog food, we dog
Mhm.
food our product constantly. And as a result of that, a lot of our inspiration for our product roadmap actually comes from using the product ourselves.
Mhm.
And so feature workflows is one such idea or one such concept where you have the set of toggles, right? You have the set of flags. You have all of these rules, all of these different experiences you're controlling. And let's say your team's been building a feature for the last 3 weeks, and now it's time to turn it on. Using LaunchDarkly, it's as simple as adding a rule or just toggling the flag on, and it's been released to your customers because the
Mhm.
code already lives in production. But what's not immediately clear from that seemingly climactic moment is all of the offline work and all of the offline collaboration that goes into play to plan a release. I'm talking about things like waking up at 5 a.m. Pacific time so you can release features at 8 a.m. to your Eastern customers, or
Mhm.
even things like getting an approval from your team lead or from your product manager or just from the feature lead when you're releasing something. All of these async processes around approvals, schedules, they're critical to releasing software, but they do slow you down and add more potential for manual error or human error.
Mhm.
And so our goal with feature workflows was to essentially automate the entire process of a feature release within LaunchDarkly. So we built these concepts like scheduling, we built concepts like approvals with a lot of thought and granularity. And what feature workflows essentially allows you to do is take these steps, stitch them together, and define an end-to-end release workflow for your flag. So you can flag a feature, let's say a new
Mhm.
checkout page, if you're redesigning your checkout page, and you have it flagged. You're ready to release it to your customers. And essentially, what you want to do is roll back the release of the old checkout page while simultaneously rolling out the release of the new checkout page, just to do it safely, just to make
Mhm.
sure that things perform as expected. Because there really isn't any replacement for testing in production with true infrastructure and your true
Mhm.
users and the true scale. And so you can actually develop a workflow or define a workflow where you say at 9 a.m., 3 days from now, I want to get approval from these two team leads in order to start progressively rolling this flag out or this feature out
Mhm.
by 5% over the next whatever. And LaunchDarkly does the math for you. And you can
Oh,
add
wow.
lots of manual steps. Yeah, we have customers that are using feature workflows to releases over 3-4 days. We actually used feature workflows to do an entire DB migration project about 6 months ago.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there, yeah,
Which
yeah.
DB which database?
We moved from MongoDB to CRDB,
Oh,
CockroachDB.
okay.
Yeah. And so there was a lot of A, B, B, A, B, B stages involved. And so that's essentially where we use feature workflows. And the peace of mind that comes with automating these stages is kind of undescribable in some ways.
These new capabilities, are they in general availability? Are they in
Absolutely.
what's okay?
Yeah, so we've had our scheduling capabilities and approvals functionality. They've been in general availability for over a year.
Oh,
And
okay.
as of earlier this year, we launched feature workflows, which allow you to stitch those together for a specific flag or multiple flags. And about 3 months ago, we released templates, which is essentially what allows you to save these workflows. So you can, let's say you find your product
Yeah.
team using the same release workflow, right? Because you internally have a standardized process for releases. You don't want to have people keep redefining it every time you want to release a feature. And
Mhm.
so that's where templates really comes in. You can save a workflow as a template. And so you can have a template for feature releases, for DB migrations, for Canary rollouts, for literally any kind of progressive rollout or staged rollout that you might have, and you can keep reapplying it and reusing it. And a lot of our enterprise features, enterprise customers to whom this feature is generally available, find this valuable because it helps them standardize their releases. So you have customers who have security and compliance requirements, right? They want to make sure that their teams are following certain processes and releasing features after getting approvals, or releasing things at a certain date and time in a certain order. And so they can define a workflow, save it as a template, and then have the peace of mind that in order to release something to their customers, their teams need to use that template. And that's really where the standardization, the consistency, but more importantly, the automation at scale helps.
Yeah, and that definitely would help with, for an enterprise, for anyone who's going to be using these workflows over and over again.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the experimentation product. One benefit of feature management is that you can experiment, you can A/B test, and so on. What is new in terms of experimentation capabilities?
Yeah. So big shout out to our experimentation team and our head of experimentation, James Frost. They launched an entire overhaul of our experimentation offering earlier this year, in June of this year. And essentially what that new update involves is, it's a substantial update. Calling it an update almost feels a little reductive or simplified. They basically doubled down on our mission to enable any team to make informed decisions and ship confidently, knowing that they're making a positive impact on the business metrics or the customer experience. And so they did a complete overhaul of our stats engine. They enhanced the integration path of our customers' existing data sets and metrics. They redesigned our user interface, and they codified modern experimentation best practices into the product itself. And so two specific updates that I want to call out to our experimentation offering. The first is, we noticed that with multiple teams and roles trying to make changes at the same time in production, collisions could happen. You could have team A trying to ship something, team B trying to ship something else, which requires different audiences, or could, just basically muddy the waters of your actual experiment and keeping the data sacred. And so parallel releases can overlap and interact with each other in unexpected ways. And there's just no way to prevent that unless you really want to slow your teams down or give them schedules or things like that. So to help with this, we've seen great success from teams where marketing teams, product teams, engineering teams, they all use the same tool to collaborate on releasing features, releasing software to their end users. And so to help with this, we've integrated our experimentation offering into our already powerful capabilities like workflows, approvals, which make it easy and safe for product managers and marketers to work on the go without having to worry about breaking things or using different tools. And so really just having the entire organization using a single tool is where we've seen a lot of success. And so to help with this, we have reduced friction when importing metrics. So we have a new metric API, metric import API, that significantly cuts down on manual duplicate work when importing metrics for experimentation. Oh, wow. Yeah, so you can get set up faster. And the second is what's known as a sample ratio mismatch test. So you can be confident that all of your experiments are correctly allocating traffic to each variant. And this is really important because let's say you've designed and kicked off an experiment. That's great. The data you're collecting is precious. With every day that goes by, with more users that interact with your software, with your tool, with your product, you're collecting more data for that experiment. And we really want to make sure that this data is as accurate as possible. And so in order to avoid any potentially faulty results, we've made all of these updates so that you can be confident and really use run experiments and ship more confident experiences using the same tool that your developers are already using to ship software.
That's great. And again, or another thing I'd like to ask you about is the core flagging platform. What are some of the new capabilities there?
Yeah. So one major capability there is our Teams functionality. So Teams is a new generally available for enterprise customers functionality that we released earlier this year. And it essentially allows you to group members within LaunchDarkly into teams, assign team names, team descriptions, team maintainers, team roles and permissions. So you can create these customized experiences for different teams using LaunchDarkly. And this is important because if you want Team A to not see or interfere with Team B's work, but you want to use one single account, this is really helpful. This is how teams work. This is how software is built, multiple teams working at the same time. But in order to make the adoption and setup of teams easier, we have integrated with IDPs, specifically Okta. It is now GA. And so if you're using Okta as an IDP, you can sync it with LaunchDarkly, and all of your teams will automatically be imported within LaunchDarkly. So you don't have to manually set it up and assign members to teams or assign names to teams. More importantly, it stays in sync. And then you can use these teams to assign them as flag maintainers or request approvals from them, etc. So you
can assign roles as well within your team.
Exactly. So you can say, this is the team lead, and I want to get approval for feature A from my team lead, but approval for feature B from this entire team, the platform team. So you can actually specify teams as approvals. And the second major update to our core platform, which is also generally available, is the flag defaults capability. And so creating flags at scale can be tedious, a little repetitive, and also error prone. And so flag defaults allow you to set flag configurations that embody best practices. Things like setting up a flag default, setting up the type of flag, whether it's a Boolean or multivariate, things like that. Basically configuration across multiple projects to make it easier.
What's next on the roadmap? What's ahead at LaunchDarkly?
Yeah, lots of exciting stuff. But the two big callouts that I want to make are custom context and accelerate. And so I'll start by describing custom context.
Okay.
So far, I've described feature flags and feature management and targeting experiences to your end users. And all of that makes sense when you're a B2C tool. But let's say you're a B2B company and your end users aren't really users. They're devices or tenants or organizations or whatever it might be. And so you want to use LaunchDarkly to target or release things to devices, organizations, tenants, again, any kind of custom context. And so this is a massive update to our core technology that we're making for all of our customers, which required a heavy lift and updating all of our SDKs and data models in a backward compatible way. So it's going to be seamless to anyone who doesn't need it or doesn't want to use it. But to customers like Hulu or CH Robinson who want to target based on licensing region, they now have a first-class way to do that. And this is something that only LaunchDarkly supports and offers today. And previously, in order to allow for this, you had to deploy workarounds. You had to create rules where you said, if user is device type, mobile, desktop, tablet. But now you can say, if device is tablet, mobile, desktop, etc. And so you can really, using different attributes or different types of context to really target a single feature. creates this first-class experience for you and allows you to say, hey, I want to turn feature A on for these 3 users and these 5 organizations and these 6 plan types, all within a single experience. Yeah.
And accelerate.
That's the new one. So we recently announced Accelerate as a new product offering, soon to be in early access. And what Accelerate is essentially a natural extension of our ability to measure the value that our customers get from feature management. So let me explain. Let's say you're a customer and you're using LaunchDarkly and feature flags to control, to launch, to essentially measure different experiences, run different experiments, etc. And your team lead comes up to you and says, hey, how do I know that LaunchDarkly is actually improving our engineering practices or LaunchDarkly is actually benefiting our engineering team? Earlier in this discussion, we talked about how at first it can seem like separating deploys and releases is an extra step. Like, why would someone do that? But there are benefits. What are those benefits and how do you measure them? And that's really what Accelerate is trying to provide our customers with. We know that engineering leaders want to measure software delivery performance and reliability across their teams. So Accelerate lets you track and visualize key engineering metrics, such as deployment frequency, release frequency, lead time for code changes, and flag coverage. And I'm sure you've caught on already, but a few of these are DORA metrics, which obviously are extremely critical to our users. LaunchDarkly has a unique vantage point where not only do we have visibility into your lead time or your number of deploys, but we can also provide you with release metrics. So we can tell you how many times did you use a flag for kill switching a feature, aka how many times did you prevent an issue from happening in production, thus reducing your MTTR. So unlike other similar solutions on the market, Accelerate treats deployments and releases separately. That is, it measures the rate of value delivery, which is your release frequency, and also shows you how many pull requests include feature flags, helping you correlate flag usage with software engineering performance. That's great. We're really excited about this.
What is the timeline for those to be released? Are they available in any kind of preview?
Yes. So Accelerate is available in early access. And if you as a listener or viewer are interested in getting access to Accelerate, you can just go to launchdarkly.com/EAP for early access program and enter your details there.
One last question. What do you think are the big challenges in feature management that are still to be solved, or what do you see as the next big steps that the field in general needs to tackle?
Yeah. So that's a constant discussion that we have internally, and I'll share literally what we discussed last week in our product leadership team. And it's the idea of really supporting a continuous release while maximizing value and mitigating risk. And as simple as it may sound, it includes components like when I say like making releases more continuous, more efficient. It includes components like automation, which are tricky. Today, workflows are at a specific environment level, but where our teams are working on making these workflows cross environments. So you can literally flag a piece of code and define its start to finish release all the way through production and step away from your computer, knowing that LaunchDarkly is going to manage its rollout. But that's not all. That is the aspect around maximizing value, rolling things out faster, innovating. But the other side of the coin is mitigating risk. And that's really where you use the word guardrail. So I'm gonna stick to that. Okay. That's really where those guardrail metrics come into play. The idea of allowing a product manager to define which metrics and experiences that they want to have not negatively impacted, or which operational metrics, or let's say your CPU throughput or some kind of threshold or latency. You want to have your performance metrics not be negatively impacted. You don't want to cause incidents by moving too fast. You only want to move with your progressive release if you know that it's having a positive impact on your business metrics, whether that's a click rate, a view rate, revenue, whatever it might be. And so how do you combine those two together? Using experimentation, you can define these metrics, you can measure things, and using our core feature management capabilities, you can automate rollouts. And we believe that the next step is resolving the challenge of bringing both of these together in a single seamless experience. And I'm really excited about the position that LaunchDarkly is in to be able to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And that's all for this episode. We'd like to thank Karishma Irani for joining us today.
Thank you.
And just a bit of background, we recently interviewed Karishma's colleague from LaunchDarkly, Ravi Thursday, and that episode of Makers would make a good companion to this one as we talked in depth about feature management and the value it has for developers, engineers, and their organizations. So if that topic interests you, you should check that out next. And we'd like to thank the sponsor of today's episode, LaunchDarkly. And thank you for joining us today. My name is Heather Joslin of the New Stack, and we'll see you next time.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.